Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Gaming and Entertainment panel for Google VetNet Career Week. I'm Kendra Johnson, the Director of Gaming and Commerce Content Partnerships for YouTube at Google, and I'm the moderator for this discussion. For the next hour, I'm really honored to speak with five wonderful panelists from the gaming and entertainment spaces. The purpose of this panel, like all the other industry panels we're hosting, is for you to hear from representatives of different companies who can talk about their experience working in these spaces, give you a better understanding of the kinds of roles that are available, and hear recommendations from these resources on how to get your foot in the door and how they made their way to their current career. And hopefully it'll help you better inform your career aspirations. I want to start off by thanking Andy, William, Joey, Carlos, and Amanda for joining us today. As you can see, it's a really fantastic panel from a variety of companies, all really excelling in the gaming and entertainment space. And guys, I'll kick it off to you to get started. I'd love for you to go around and have you guys um, share some information about yourself, what part of the industry you work in, and then for those of you who did serve, what branch of service you were part of, and if you didn't, which one you think is coolest, which is a really challenging or sort of dangerous prompt for the start of our panel. I don't want us to get too competitive here, but and then really like. Um, if you can share what you like most about working in this space and your transition, that would be fantastic. I'll kick it off. I'm here because I feel very passionate about this work that Google and our peers are doing in this space. And I am the sister of a Navy officer. So had a lot of fun being able to witness his career and what he's been doing and spending time in Annapolis. So it's a delight for me to be here. And to everyone in the audience, thank you for joining us today. So with that, I'm going to kick off. Andy, would you give us, give the audience here some background on you and your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with my current role. Right now, I'm on the platform strategy and partnerships team at Activision Blizzard, which is a company that publishes and develops video games. On my team, I work with the platforms that we put our content on. So in this context, you've probably heard of companies like Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo. We work with those companies and sort of the partnerships or the agreements that we have with them, as well as thinking about new platforms that come up and should our games be on them, and in what way should we interact and be with those newer platforms. So it's a lot of fun, very strategy focused, and I really enjoy it. But prior to that, I was in a rotational program at my company where I would go around to different business oriented roles. At Activision Blizzard, and I can talk more about that a little bit later. I actually got here post business school. I went to business school for 2 years, and prior to that, I was in the Air Force, where I was a nuke operator working with ICBMs in North Dakota. So I had a lot of fun there, and yeah, can say that Air Force is the best branch, I guess, from my experience at least. But have a lot of love for everybody out there. So that's my journey.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. William, would love to hear your journey and tell us more about what you're doing here at Google.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Kendra. Yes, I've been with Google for almost 6 years. I currently work in our cloud division, working in the gaming vertical. And so we support customers like Activision Blizzard, who's actually one of our largest partners in the gaming space, including all of the others that you could think of as well. And I've been in this role for the last 2.5 years. I've also worked on the ad side of the house here at Google, working on partnership and business development deals overall. I've been in sort of the media space for almost 20 years. I mean, I started my career in the space. I've had a lot of different stints along the way, starting with the sort of Warner Brothers ecosystem, and then working a little bit in the gaming space, which we'll get to in a second. And then obviously coming over on the tech side with Google. So it's been a great, varied journey, but been found a lot of success recently building out sort of the future of gaming in the cloud space, which is what we do here at Google Cloud. I did not serve, but I do have three of my closest first cousins who all are Navy officers based in Virginia. So I would have to say that if I had a favorite branch, it would be Navy, just because I know so much about it. I talk to them all the time, and they've had such great, successful careers with the Navy over the years. So I would put my hat on the Navy as my favorite overall.
Awesome. All right, to Navy, go. Okay. Joey, love to hear about your path next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joey Burnaby, and I'm currently a senior global brand manager at Electronic Arts. In terms of my current role, I support our LA-based gaming studios, Industrial Toys, and Respawn Entertainment. And I've been in the industry since graduating from UCLA Anderson in 2014. So I'm a Navy veteran, so I think that's 3 for Navy. I actually spent 13 years on active duty, and I was a counterterrorism analyst and supported Navy Special Warfare, Navy SEALs prior to going to business school. So kind of circling back to what I do in marketing, I'm really responsible for working with our creative teams and doing the go-to-market strategies for our game launches. So for those of you that are following the industry, like for instance, all those trailers that you see at E3, our brand teams and our creative teams are responsible for bringing those to life. So that's what I do in a nutshell.
You've had a busy couple months, I'm assuming, leading into E3.
Yes.
All highlights available on YouTube for those of you who missed E3 who are watching. That's great. Let's go next to Carlos.
Thanks, Kendra. My name is Carlos Santana. It's a real name. Prior Army officer, and I think like Joey and Andy, I did my shift through business school. And from there, I've just been more like internal consulting, like trusted advisor to the key leadership. I've had a couple of stints in financial services, and now I'm kind of like working in Disney advertising sales. And, you know, it's just advertising sales and integrated marketing for Walt Disney as a whole, including like ABC, Disney Channel, ESPN, Disney Plus, FX, Nat Geo, local stations, like the whole thing. So you've seen like Mad Men. Advertising sales for that side. Roll up to the chief of staff. So we get privileged with access across the entire like leadership suite. And then my job is just to, you know, develop a point of view on kind of like the business issues at hand. And then like, you know, help establish like, you know, some solutions or do some transformational efforts. Just because my background's more like generalist consulting, I get to apply that internally. So it's been pretty fun. Been here for about a year. So, you know, COVID hit, I started work, and all I've known is like remote work, but it's been great so far.
That's awesome. Thanks, Carlos. The campus at Disney is amazing when you can finally get on location. I spent many years there. It's an awesome, awesome place. Amanda, let's wrap up with you and your journey.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Kendra. So hi, everyone. I'm Amanda. I work at Netflix in a partnerships role. I focus on our platform partnerships. So it sounds similar to Andy's experience, but my role is really figuring out which platforms Netflix should be integrated onto and what is the optimal product experience when we do integrate onto those platforms. So you can think of it as working with, you know, Roku, Amazon, Google to figure out really what is the best Netflix experience on those platforms. My journey didn't start in platform partnerships, though. It was a bit winding throughout my career at Netflix. I actually started in a strategy and analytics role where I pivoted to out of a management consulting career. And where they were really looking for more of a functional fit in the role versus any specific industry experience. But once I got into Netflix, I was able to, you know, understand the industry better, understand the different functional areas that I could move into. and slowly but surely made my way closer and closer to the partnership space through a few pivots to ultimately land the role that I'm in now. So happy to talk more about my journey later, but it's definitely a stepping stone approach to my current role. I didn't know I was going to have to pick a branch of the military, so I feel like I'm picking sides now because I am not a veteran. I'm a civilian ally, but I will go with Air Force because we've been a bit skewed towards Navy, and I did actually have a period in high school where I thought about the Air Force Academy as a future for myself. So I'll stick with that.
That's awesome. Okay, we're somewhat balanced. Somewhat balanced. Carlos, you have to be super strong over there for Army. For us. Well, Amanda, just building on what you mentioned was sort of the journey it took to get you to Netflix, and I think many, if not all of us on this panel, kind of found our way in media and entertainment and gaming. But it sounded like you were also kind of specific when you set your sights on Netflix. Do you want to tell us a little bit about sort of that journey and any advice you might have for other people as they think about honing in and how to fit?
Yeah, I actually wasn't specific about Netflix. My first role was quite opportunistic. I was looking for really a fit within kind of the broader industry that was looking for, again, my specific skill set, not necessarily a specific domain or industry expertise. And I was lucky to find that opportunity as a general analyst at Netflix. It was really once I got into that first path or position that I took a more charted path towards my current role. Once I identified partnerships as a space I wanted to get into, I actually moved to a partnership specific analytics role to get closer to the space, and was able to leverage that experience to actually get an external partnerships role at a smaller company, which gave me the experience I needed in the space to then get back to Netflix in the partnerships role. So it was again, once I got into the company, I was able to to build a career path towards where I optimally wanted to be. And I think that really does apply broadly to anyone kind of transitioning into a new space, and particularly in this case for veterans and military spouses as well, being able to identify where you have a potential overlapping skill set or value set with a particular role, even if it's not ultimately where you want to be, can really help you get your foot in the door and then chart a path from there. So that would be, my kind of general advice to not just veterans in this community, but anyone who's looking for a major pivot in their career.
That's really helpful. And Andy, maybe talk, if you wouldn't mind. I think the experience you've had as the program at Blizzard that allowed you to kind of circulate around the company. Would you recommend that as a path for people to look at similar type of programs?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just here. There are a lot of typically Fortune 500 companies who offer those sorts of programs, whether in finance specific or general. There's a lot of these types of rotational programs out there. The one at my company specifically was for people coming out of business school in business oriented roles. So I got to see. I worked on a studio operations role. I worked on also a brand management role on a video game called Destiny, where I got to see a lot more of the marketing side. So that and finally seeing the strategy and more corporate, is how I'd put it, role in my current team. So those sorts of things are really awesome opportunities to really sort of hone into where you think you might want to end up, because as Amanda was kind of hinting at, I think for a lot of people, it's hard to really know what's out there until you're actually in there and seeing what you enjoy and see what you like working on day to day. Unless you're, one of these whatever 5% who sort of emerge from childhood knowing exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life. But I think for most of us mortals, it's a lot easier to kind of go see some different things and take things as they come.
Yeah, I think that speaks to a lot of us of finding our path. William, I'd love to ask you what was the break that you had? What was your first, you know, piece to get your foot in the door in entertainment? And if you can elaborate a little bit more on your background.
Yeah, no. So there's kind of like two, I would say, or a couple of breaks that happened along the way. So, in college, I was really focused on engineering, and so just like a typical engineering job at a big corporation, working in the engineering department. I really didn't think about sort of marrying my passions, which were everything from sports to gaming to music. I didn't even think about the idea of marrying the two. And once I got wind of an opportunity to be a college rep for the Warner Music Group at my school, I just interned and did it for free, right? So I was just basically working for free, almost like a full-time job, but learning all the ins and outs of the entertainment business, and it was great. I did it for 2 years, and ultimately was able to get a role right out of college working in that space. So I took a quick pivot, and that was that level of sacrifice if you will, for essentially working for free for 2 years, opened up a door that started my career in the entertainment space. And then technology's evolution in the 2000s, from streaming and all the disruption that happened with things like Napster and all of these sort of decentralized ways of accessing media and entertainment really sort of was my next goal, if you will, to accomplish. It was like I need to get on the other side of this. I was kind of working more the traditional side, and I really wanted to get more into the more disruptive side of the business. And I, continued to work, continued to think through how I could leverage what I was doing at the time to sort of open the door to other opportunities. I think it was said earlier, like, get a role that gets you into the space, and then whatever that may be, learn as much as you can, and then leverage that to maybe move into other positions that might be, more suitable to your long-term career strategy. And so I did that exact thing. And there was a moment in time where when I was working at Gatorade, that's where I went after I left Warner. I went to Gatorade before I got to the gaming space, and we worked a lot with Xbox, and we worked a lot with 2K Sports and a lot of other video game publishers with our brand integrations. And so I used that as an opportunity to build relationships and learn more about the gaming space and really think through how do I make this sort of transition to where I ultimately see a long-term career path for me and where my passions really align. And through that work, that's what allowed me to sort of build a rapport in the gaming community. And then ultimately, I was able to get a business development role with Xbox, just from building that sort of initial conversation and relationship. So I think for me, those breaks came from doing things on behalf of someone else for free, not expecting anything, not sort of, automatically getting a role. It came from sort of that relationship development and offering my current skill set to help that other person out in some way. And then ultimately, it led to two great opportunities that moved my career forward.
It's such a great way to think about like building your career is building those relationships and helping people. And I think, certainly I felt similarly in my career is like finding those opportunities where you're able to interact with people outside of your immediate space. And if you're driven by curiosity, use that opportunity to get to know them, ask them more questions, figure out, okay, what's happening here? Why are we partnered together, right? Like, what are the big opportunities? I love, obviously, that Gatorade to Xbox transition makes so much sense when we think about the gaming industry, right? Like how much gaming has grown as, I'm sorry, I'm gonna do like a selfish plug for gaming now for everybody. Gaming is truly at the heart of an entertainment experience right now, and you are sort of, William, on the early side, getting Gatorade in, thinking about Xbox and that relationship, but just generally as we're seeing much more mainstream brands interested in gaming. Amanda's company has Gamer Week happening, right? Or I think you called it Geek Week, which we might need to work on a little bit. But totally seeing the ways in which gaming is just really imbuing itself across all forms of entertainment and media and consumption. It's really exciting. So I do think that's like another way to think about career trajectory is there's so many ways in, as gaming is spreading its tentacles, as well as entertainment and media has always been so big, but gaming is really growing in terms of its impact and size in the landscape, which I think is from in terms of like a momentum perspective. When you think about, okay, where is there growth, where is there opportunity, as you're looking at a transition, I think this is a place that I'd recommend people. Entertainment is absolutely fantastic. Add gaming as another part of your entertainment exploration. Joey, I wanted to sort of circle back to you, because in thinking about some of the things we talked about before the panel, what I was really struck was the amount of time that you served, and so your transition maybe happened a couple of years after service, than compared to, say, Carlos or Andy. And I wonder if you might speak to that for people in the audience who, are coming out, after 10 years or so and thinking about, okay, where does this leave me? And you have an amazing experience coming out of, was it 13 years of service?
Yes. So I think I think I can bring a lot of perspective on this. And when I was first thinking about, moving on from the military, a lot of my friends were actually like, "Are you sure about this? You only have 7 more years to get to that 20-year retirement." And I think in my Navy career, I was just very fortunate in that I had accomplished a lot of my goals early on in terms of being a career intel officer, getting to work with special forces, and it's hard to top that. And I kind of just did it early on in my naval career. And I also wanted to think about, well, what does my life look like beyond the military and beyond the government? So what I did is I actually leaned on the veteran network quite a bit. And I asked my friends who were in business school, like, what did they think of like careers outside the military? How are they able to transition? And that kind of led me to the first decision point in terms of going to business school to be that bridge for a career. And I've met plenty of folks who were at their mid career point on active duty, like say 10, 11 years in, and they were able to successfully transition into corporate careers. So I use that kind of as, as a guide. And then for me, I think I'm definitely a case in point in terms of just things just happening at certain times. So I'll be the first one to admit, I did not grow up as a gamer. I had very strict Asian parents. I was not allowed to do much as a kid except get straight A's. So that was my childhood experience. And then UCLA Anderson happens to have, for our master's thesis in business school, it's a consulting project. And my project client happened to be Blizzard Entertainment. So literally my first real exposure to gaming was going to BlizzCon, which is a convention that Blizzard Entertainment holds every year for its fans, and meeting people, because we were doing primary research for this graduate school project. I just remember meeting people who had played World of Warcraft for years, some folks had even gotten married in game. And then I also went to a StarCraft 2 esports tournament. That was literally my first exposure to gaming. So I went from like 0 to 100 miles per hour very fast in this industry. And to make a long story short, my team did really well on this project. I built a lot of good relationships at Blizzard Entertainment. And that's where I eventually found my first role in gaming. And I was very fortunate that the hiring manager for my first job in gaming, my old boss, John Heineke, also happened to be a Navy veteran. And when he looked at my background, he just thought I could, like, even though I didn't have marketing experience prior, he knew what I had done as a naval officer, and he was willing to take a chance on me. And that's just kind of where my career started. So I think my advice for a lot of veterans, especially those who might have a few more years in, is that it's always possible to transition to a different career. I think as long as you do your research and you lean on those networks to get your questions asked, that's really a good starting point.
That's great advice. Carlos, Andy, curious if you want to add on anything to Joey's thoughts.
Just one thing. I mean, I definitely like agree completely with Joey. Like that's definitely the way to go. Uh, for my side, I wanted like a very targeted. I want to do some sort of consulting type of role. So to complement like the military experience, and of course, I've had a couple of like supervisors that used to be in the Navy, so I don't hate on that service either. Um, uh, I needed to have the complementary like skill set against that. So just that I had it really helps to have the conversation just to say like, look, I can speak the common vocabulary, right? And I can have a common frame of reference to be able to tie in my experience against that. So that goes a long way because especially for some roles, it's more like an apprenticeship type of model. And once you get there, of course, you'll learn. Your background says that you can. It's more about like being able to carry that conversation.
Yeah, no, I think they covered it. All good stuff there. So nothing really to add, but similar mindset here.
Thanks. Yeah, I think transitions can be sort of like a little bit hard to navigate. And I love the advice that you guys have shared so far. Because I think I think what's I've heard today is so many people came from different backgrounds into media, entertainment, and gaming. And so finding that way to tell your story and thread that needle, I too had a media and entertainment was my second career. So I think I think we're all testaments to the power of finding a way in and building those relationships. I think you guys have all mentioned people, right, who understood you or took the time to listen to your background or ask, see how this might connect forward. And so I think that's one thing that I think is really critical. And you guys mentioned those networks, but anything else you might offer up on that part of the career transition piece? Any um, you know, pieces that are like critical for you as we all still keep building these relationships, right?
So I think what I like a couple pieces of advice in terms of if I could think back on my time at business school and what I would do differently. I think the ability to talk about your background and interview well is very underrated. And I can tell you, as like someone coming from a long active duty career, I had no idea how to interview for a job when I was first in business school, because they don't teach you that in the Navy, because you get assigned a job every 2 to 3 years and you just go. Whereas when you make that transition to the corporate sector, you have to be very responsible and manage your own career, which is I could talk for a long time about that. But I just think that ability to be comfortable talking about your successes and what you can contribute is very essential into landing any role. It doesn't matter if it's in gaming or a different business vertical, but you have to be able to interview well. And so, so my two pieces of advice for most military veterans: lean out on that network because people want to help you. And number two, get as much coaching and practice as possible interviewing, because it's a skill set that is not taught to us as military professionals that is expected of you in the corporate world.
I think that's great advice. I would definitely second that 100%, especially being able to thread the needle of your experience that may not seem on the surface that it is perfectly aligned with a role or a team or a position. But there's a lot there. I mean, I think I look at our side on the cloud piece of it. A lot of what our team does is building infrastructure and thinking through logistics and problem solving and taking risks and helping to sort of navigate customers through that risk. And all of those are general strategies and principles that I'm sure a lot of people coming from a military background have as part of their DNA. And I think being able to thread that into how that impacts a role that may not seem like it's sort of there on the surface, but it's probably there in the details, and that experience that was just talked about, and taking time to walk through preparing for interviews is important. And I would say the other part of it would be specifically to gaming. Gaming is a very unique culture, and you'll meet a lot of interesting personalities who have been a part of the gaming space, for decades. And so I think it's really important to have a conversational element about games, right? Like games, span all generations, whether it's mobile, casual gaming to hardcore, console or computer gaming. There's something for everybody. And there's so much information out there about the business of games as well, because it's in the news in whatever realm pretty much every day. And so having some conversational pieces, whether it's your own personal gaming experience or just what you're reading about maybe in the news, and being able to articulate that to someone in the business goes a long way, because gamers love to talk about games. Most people who you may meet, especially in an executive or a hiring position, may have an extensive time of playing games themselves. And so the more that you can speak to that, it can definitely allow you to stand out, along with the earlier point of, threading your sort of background and expertise into what works best for the role at hand that you're applying for.
Kendra, just to add one thing to that, I think because I think that kind of threading the experience is super important. And I would also say that there are companies out there, probably a lot of ours, who are also investing in, training up our talent and recruiting teams to really understand how to review military resumes and understand that experience so that they can better align it with the needs of our teams. And so as you're looking at, which companies to pursue within this space, I would also kind of tap into your networks to really understand, where companies are invested in, better understanding what your experience and skill sets may be, so that, it's not all the burden on you, but there are companies that are investing a lot in this space as well.
Yeah, that's really, really great advice. And I think we might get into some of what, either if you want to share a little bit more about what Netflix is thinking about, and Carlos might be able to share about Disney as well, because I do think there's been a lot of corporate recognition, right? Obviously, this program today of how we, from a corporate side, we need to be able to explain ourselves as just as much as, the flip side. And I think it's really important to open those lines of communication around understanding is really critical. So we'll definitely hit on, I'd like to hit on that as well. But anything else as you guys think about, your journey and key learnings, I want to make sure we went around the horn for everything that people wanted to share. I would just piggyback a little bit on what William was talking about, with whether it's gaming or entertainment. I know when I interviewed people for roles on the film and television side, I always asked, "What are you watching? What are you into right now?" What I would say about any aspect of media and entertainment, for the most part, people are really excited to be either directly contributing to production or tangentially related to the content that's being created or monetized or gamified. And so showing an interest in this space is critical. You might be an amazingly great financial analyst, but if you're like, I don't watch movies or television, and you're interviewing in a media role, like it's not going to be the most effective interview. So that is one piece of advice I would say. Like, we're all really excited to be here. It took us a lot, for some of us, a winding road, but even Joey, wasn't a gamer. Now you're excelling, and really figuring out the gaming space. And now we all really expect that, right? That level of excitement. So, this is my recommendation, to watch a lot of content and play a lot of games as part of your preparation for interviews.
It's kind of like dating, right? You want to show an interest in the company, so just read about it, look at the content.
That's right. And for those of you with children, gameplay with children, super helpful. It'll get you parent cred points, as well as, I think, humility for you as an adult when you're not as good as you think you are. But I think that's also really important. We are now making products for like this, like we're developing products that will be played by 10-year-olds, right? By the time the products are launched. So really thinking about how um, interactivity, whether it's entertainment content or gaming content, utilize these opportunities to really think about it from the user perspective, because I think it can really inform any of the conversations you're going to have. It's really, I think it's certainly valuable along with your functional skills that you're bringing to the table. Um, Last question that I was wanted to hit on. We touched on a little bit, which was around imposter syndrome, and I think I would say it's relevant no matter what you've done. Whether you're 20 years in the industry and you get a new job, whether you're transitioning in, I feel like it's certainly something that's top of mind for people. So I'd love it if any of you guys have some thoughts on how you've successfully navigated through this or seen other people, and advice because it's we're all acknowledging that, especially for this kind of transition, we're all going out on a limb talking to new people in a new industry that you don't have a ton of familiarity with. So not just landing the interview and the job, but like in the job, do you have any success stories you can share?
I can jump in on that, Kendra. I love this question because I feel like imposter syndrome defined at least a full year of my my current role at Netflix. I joined a team where almost everyone except myself had a deep product and engineering background, and I didn't at all. My career was purely kind of on the business side, and I also had generally the least amount of work experience of anyone at my level. So my first year was just kind of riddled with feelings of insecurity and inadequacy. But I will say what ended up changing, and a lot of it was just due to great coaching and mentorship, and taking a few risks here and there, where I really just kind of exposed my authentic self, including all of my weaknesses, is that I ended up realizing that I was hired for this role not to be the same as everyone else and bring the same set of skills, but really to be different and lean into my strengths that weren't as prevalent on the rest of the team. And when I did that and was also open about kind of my deficiencies, that level of honesty with myself and my colleagues just significantly reduced that feeling of imposter syndrome and was very, very freeing. So when it comes to this, I would just say, recognize that you were hired to be your authentic self and to lean into your strengths, and don't be worried about your perceived weaknesses. It's okay to be vulnerable about those.
That's
I would say
amazing.
I had a similar situation too when I joined Xbox. I was a gamer and I was like into gaming, but I never worked professionally in the space. And so when I first went out to Seattle and went to the campus and saw these like huge Halo figures and pictures of the launch date from early 2000s, and because when I got there it'd been around for about 10 years at that point. So it was like I was walking into this like labyrinth of Xbox history, and people had been a part of it from day one and had all the war stories that I had none of because I wasn't there. And so I did kind of feel a little bit out of place. But to Amanda's point, I think what I was able to do though is use that as a strength in the sense that I identified problems that some of the experienced, folks on the team weren't really paying attention to. And so they had their way of doing business. They had a very clear sense of sort of the market up to that point. But coming in with a new perspective and thinking about the next 10 years of the platform and what are the next sort of trends that are going to be important, I was able to offer up ideas that were new and different and sort of outside of the line and bringing resolution to problems that were coming up that I could be in the lead to help solve. And so that ability to, maintain sort of that initial impact of sort of feeling as if maybe, others are more experienced, but your perspective is why you were hired. And so being able to identify, a problem or two or a big idea that's sort of different but could bring value to the company and the team that you're a part of will always ensure that you never have to feel that sort of imposter syndrome for long. So everyone has it, even the people that you work with had it at some point. But I think finding your space to be a problem solver for things that may be coming around the corner that others aren't thinking about is a great place to sort of sit yourself to break away and move out of that imposter syndrome feeling.
I can add to what William mentioned in terms of adding value to the team. And I think in my specific case, it was really about earning the trust of the game development team as a marketer. So I think I definitely experienced imposter syndrome my first year in, and I think it's always worse in your head than what it is in reality. But I think just kind of, getting those little wins where in my case I was part of the global brand team that launched the game Overwatch, and it was building that initial rapport with the executive producer and the game director. And in my experience with Overwatch, we had a ton of leaks, whether it was an ad server leaking an asset or stuff like that. But I would always be the first one to immediately find out about it and immediately talk to the game director or the game team about it. And so it's just kind of those little nuanced things where you continue to build rapport with the team that you work for, as well as show that you have the best interest of the game in mind, and that you're not going to suggest anything crazy that the developers wouldn't buy off on. I think that's super critical, especially in gaming. And I think being able to those types of experiences, it definitely helped me overcome a lot of my imposter syndrome, because I had developed this relationship and this knack for working with a game developer and knowing how to communicate with them.
The only other thing that I found specifically helpful is try to carve out your one little corner that you can be the expert at. And a lot of times it's your boss and your boss's boss don't necessarily have as much time to be on the ground level of things, really researching stuff. So to give you an example, obviously if you're in gaming, it's a lot of times they don't actually have the time to play the game as much or see what's going on in there, or read forum comments. So things well, how are players reacting to this, or what exactly is the system that's set up right now, and how much are we selling this, that sort of thing that's something where you can contribute by hitting the books and just really researching and putting in that sort of time and demonstrate that you're learning, and also have this type of expertise in this one corner that they might not have. And then you can grow out of that corner after you're kind of comfortable with it and learning the more general stuff that the people that have been more experienced can know. So I think that's been really helpful for me and for others that I've seen in the space.
I just have one thing to add for that. Definitely agree with Andy. On my experience, I focus more on the learning component and not necessarily being right or 100% correct. So long as as I'm picking up things, I'm 60%, and I can refine my knowledge with the people that are actually doing the work. It's crazy how much you'll get in 2 weeks. So over time, if you get super comfortable with just feeling like an imposter and making it clear, look, I don't understand, but I've been exposed to it, but I'm willing to learn, doors open up. Just keep the same attitude as what you had in the military, and things will be fine.
This is fantastic advice. I feel like we've all, even on our panel, are probably filing away some of these tips that we've shared with each other, which is fantastic. Before we wrap up, I wanted to give an opportunity for some of the participants here. I know your companies may have or are developing offerings that are more specific to the military community when it comes to job programs. So would love to hear from, I think, Carlos and Amanda and maybe Andy. There's a a part of the Blizzard world that focuses on the, or Activision world, I should say, that focuses on this as well.
I'll go
Carl,
first.
you want to kick off? Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, no problem. So I didn't come in through this program, but I learned it once I was inside because, military, like working groups, right? So Disney has a Heroes Work Here initiative, and it's just a company-wide effort to hire, train, and support veterans. And it even goes beyond to like help, kind of like this, with like resume writing and interview preparation and things like that. In September, there's going to be a Veterans Institute Summit, which all the veterans can join. If they go to DisneyInstitute.com, they can get a little bit more information on that. But I think since the inception of the Heroes Work Here initiative, they've hired about 10,000 military members. So something to consider.
That's fantastic. Amanda, I know you sit on a panel at Netflix, and there are a lot of really exciting things happening there. I want to give us you.
First of all, it's amazing to hear 10,000 employees, Carlos. That's bigger than our company. So that's really cool. Yeah, I mean, I think probably compared to, Disney, Netflix is fairly early on in our journey to support the military community, but we are doing a couple of things right now. Over the last couple of years, we've stood up an internal community called Vetflix, which is maybe a little cheesy, but it's for veterans and veteran allies to really build a community that supports veterans and spouses that are transitioning into the workplace, and focus on ways that we can build a more inclusive environment at Netflix for those folks. And we embed kind of our talent and HR business partner teams into those groups to provide help for those transitioning as well. I kind of alluded to this earlier, but we're also formalizing a training program for our talent and recruiting teams to better understand and interpret military experience so that they can, better feed those folks into the teams where those needs align. So, we're kind of early on in our journey, but we are doing things today to prepare for what is hopefully a much more robust offering in the future, where we envision kind of similar to what Carlos mentioned, more formal transition and mentorship programs, maybe even return to work programs for military spouses, et cetera. So we're nowhere compared to where we want to be, but we're working on it.
That's great to hear that focus. And Andy, do you want to talk a little bit about the charitable arm?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have something called the Call of Duty Endowment. And what this does is it raises money for third-party veterans hiring organizations. So there are companies called like Hire Heroes, American Veterans, US Vets, and those sorts of companies will definitely help you on this sort of transition. And so the Call of Duty Endowment raises money for them. There are a lot of, if you just go look up Call of Duty Endowment, you can see some of these companies and maybe pick one that interests you, and they can help with resume writing or looking for just jobs in general. It's not necessarily specific to media and entertainment. I'll also say if you look on our, if you just Google Activision Blizzard Veterans Guide, we do have a Veterans Guide PDF download, and that's really helpful for anybody looking to work at Activision Blizzard or at any sort of gaming company. I know everybody on this call is a little bit more business oriented, but maybe you're out there and you're an artist and you want to go be on the art side of it. Or you really want to be in production and helping to make the game move and make sure everybody's hitting their timetables and stuff like that. This will kind of give you a little bit more context on what roles are out there on that, and what you might need to do in order to be able to go get that. So, go look that up, Activision Blizzard Veterans Guide, and that'll kind of give you a little bit more context, especially on more of the creative side and production side versus the business side rather.
That sounds terrific. Well, we are unfortunately out of time. I want to thank you guys so much for being here with us today, and really want to thank my panelists who took the time to be part of such an important event, and really appreciate you giving back today. I hope you guys are, as interested in media, entertainment, and gaming as we are, and and wish you all the best of luck on your journey. For those of you who are looking to find more industry panels, following this starting at 2 o'clock Pacific, we'll have a panel on the auto industry. So you can log on to that live stream and you'll hear from representatives from Ford, Uber, Waymo, Stellantis, and Tesla. And then if you're more interested in learning about the management consulting or finance and banking, which we kind of touched on a bit here today as well, go back to the VetNet career website and you'll see recorded programming from those tracks. All these panels are recorded and viewable whenever through the google.co/vets site. So thank you again for participating. This is a fantastic panel. And thank you to all watching. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks all.
Thanks, Kendra.
Thanks, Kendra.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.